Before he became the legend of the Mara, Scarface was just another young lion without land, status, or recognition, born into a life of exile. Alongside his three brothers Morani, Sikio, and Hunter, he roamed the fringes of the Masai Mara ecosystem. The brothers were nomads, outcasts, without a pride to rule, often forced to survive on scraps, evade stronger males, and navigate the dangers of hyenas and starvation. The savannah was not kind to young lions without territory. Music. Scarface already stood out even in these early days, not by strength or power, but by the wound above his eye, a permanent reminder of a violent encounter, which later gave him his music
name.
At this point, it was just an injury, not yet a mark of legend.
The
brothers remained together, moving silently through the tall grass, hunting at night and sleeping hidden by day, waiting for their moment. Their world was one of constant threats. Any attempt to challenge dominant males could end in death. Lions in power had everything: food, females, music, security. Scarface and his brothers had none of that. They were observers of the
kingdom they didn't yet belong to. But
something burned inside them. A quiet hunger for more. Not just for survival, but for dominance. The world hadn't given them a place they would take. Music.
1.
In 2011, everything began to
change.
Scarface and his brothers were now nearly 4 years old, full of muscle, aggression, and restless ambition. The time of waiting was over. From the rocky ridges of Rhino Ridge, they began to hear distant roars, calls echoing from the marsh area, a signal that something was stirring within the heart of the Mara. Music. Scarface and his brothers followed the sound like a war drum, guided not by instinct alone but by hunger and purpose. The Marsh Pride, one of the most powerful prides in the region, was led by aging males, Claude and Romeo, former kings who were reaching the end of their rule. The brothers sensed opportunity. For Scarface, the call was not just for land or power.
It was a
chance to carve a legacy, to rewrite the story of a wounded landless lion. For moved as one, fearless, focused,
and ready to risk
everything. The journey into the core of the Mara would not be safe, but it was no longer possible to remain on the sidelines. The call had been heard, and it could no longer be ignored.
The path
to dominance was clear, but it was not without fear. Scarface and his brothers had grown strong, but they were not yet kings. Claude and Romeo, though aging, were still formidable opponents, battle-tested lions with deep scars and deeper experience. The Mara had seen many young coalitions rise, only to be crushed by the weight of those who came before
them.
Music. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that YouTube can understand and deliver more of our content to you. The brothers hesitated, not in their steps, but in the knowledge of what could be lost. One wrong move could lead to exile again, or worse, death.
The
savannah was a brutal judge of overconfidence. Scarface had already tasted pain. His wounded face reminded him daily of how easily power could be lost or never gained at all. There were whispers among the other lions, too, that the marsh was cursed, that no young males could hold it for long. The memory of previous coalitions, ambitious but broken, still lingered. But within that fear, a question remained. What was the cost of doing nothing? Of living and dying in the shadows? Doubt was present, but retreat was never truly an option. Scarface wasn't made to exist as a forgotten lion. Deep down, he knew the risk wasn't just necessary.
It was
destiny. Scarface never had a traditional mentor. No elder male guided him. Instead, his strength came from the bond he shared with his brothers. The four musketeers, as they would come to be known, were their own mentors,
Each.
sharpening the instincts and skills of the other through every shared hunt, every battle, every narrow escape.
They
Were equals yet different. Morani was brave and often led the charge.
Sicchio.
Was cautious, the thinker among them. Hunter was wild, impulsive always, pushing boundaries. And Scarface, he was something else. The wound above his eye made him look older, wiser, harder.
But
Beyond the scar, he carried something.
deeper.
A will that refused to bend. Their bond was their power. In the wild, where most lions fail alone, they thrived together. Each brother filled the gaps in the others, forming a unit more dangerous than any lone lion. This unity was their greatest lesson. Survival was in numbers, but greatness came from loyalty and purpose.
As they
Closed in on the marsh pride, their strength wasn't just physical,
it was.
spiritual. Scarface didn't need a guide. He had brothers who would die for him.
Just as he would for them.
In them he found all the guidance he needed.
The
takeover came like a storm. In October 2011, Scarface and his brothers descended into the marsh territory. The four young males still wearing their rough, scruffy manis moved with force and coordination. Their target was
clear.
Claude and Romeo, the aging kings of the Marsh Pride.
Once part of a
Stronger trio, the two remaining males had already begun to lose ground,
time.
had dulled their strength, and now the challengers had arrived.
The
confrontation was swift, outnumbered, and outmatched. Romeo fled, disappearing into the hills near Rhino Ridge where he was last seen fighting hyenas over
scraps.
Claude tried to hold the line, but was overwhelmed. The Marsh Pride fell, and Scarface and his brothers stood victorious. For the first time, Scarface walked not as a nomad, but as a ruler. The females of the Pride accepted. The new kings, the mom balance of power, had shifted, and the Mara had new masters. From that day forward, they were no longer simply young lions seeking a place. They were the kings of the glade. Scarface's wound had healed into legend. His appearance alone was enough to inspire all. The scar, the man, the posture, all marks of dominance. And yet he knew this was just the beginning.
To rule was not to
conquer once.
It was to defend, to
endure, to become more than a name.
as
They established their presence. A new phase of their lives began. No longer fugitives, they now had something to
lose.
And in the Mara, that meant the battles would never truly end.
Power came at a price.
With their new rule came constant challenges. Rival coalitions roamed nearby, watching.
Lone
Males tested the boundaries.
Scarface
And his brothers, now known across the savannah, had to fight to maintain everything they had won. Their days of wandering were over, but their lives were no easier. If anything, the danger had
grown.
They divided their dominance across vast territories stretching into the Malikaga and Ashneel camp zones, shadowing the Mara River. The land was rich, but it attracted danger. Scarface and his brothers faced off with other males, drove out intruders, and sometimes clashed with hyenas or buffalo. Each fight left new marks, new stories in the scars they wore.
Despite
it all, their bond held. Morani became Scarface's closest ally. In the later years, they were often seen together, guarding the Pride and patrolling their
kingdom.
Sicchio, ever observant, remained the watcher. Hunter, fierce and unpredictable, hunted in the shadows. But enemies grew stronger, too.
A.
Younger generation of lions, muscular, bold, and reckless, began to rise across the Mara. Their roars echoed with the same ambition Scarface once had. Among them, the Solace boys watched from afar, biding their time. Scarface faced more than just predators. Once he was speared by a Maasai herder while protecting his
Territory.
death nearly took him, but conservationists treated his wounds.
He
Returned limping but defiant. Every attempt to break him only added to the
myth.
The Musketeers held the paradise. Pride by 2016, a prize of 9 lionesses, with cubs and young males. Tourists from across the world came searching for one lion in particular. Scarface had become more than a name. He was the face of the Mara. Every day brought a new test.
But
Scarface didn't just survive. He ruled. And in doing so, he became the legend he was destined to be. Years passed, and the Mara changed. Scarface and his brothers held on, but time moved differently for lions. Rivals came and went.
the
Territory they had once seized with youthful strength now required constant vigilance to defend.
Scarface had
Already beaten the odds. He had lived past the typical 3-year reign of a male lion. He was entering the unknown, a phase few survive, where age and wisdom must compensate for fading
strength.
the coalition began to weaken. In August 2019, Hunter vanished without a trace. No body was found, only silence.